Summer is here on the farm, and the pastures that were once luscious and green in the spring have now turned crispy and brown. It's a hungry gap in our dam irrigated garden as we await our summer fruits and vegetables to ripen. But the goat milk is still a-flowing and the rainbow chard is still providing. So I decided to make us a colourful chard and feta pie for lunch, with plenty of leftovers for the rest of the week. I've made feta 3 times now since I started milking the goats, and each batch has been delicious. It's not complicated, but it does involve a bit of waiting time in between steps. It's a great way to use up excess milk. 12 litres of milk makes roughly 1.5 kilograms of feta. Using this large stainless steel pot, I've found it pretty easy to maintain the right temperature for culturing the milk. Once the cultures and lipase have been added, I gently stir the milk to incorporate them and leave them for an hour to ferment before adding rennet diluted in a cup of water. The rennet creates the curds to form my cheese. After an hour sitting at the right temperature, the curds have properly formed a clean break, and it's time to cut them up. This is one of the most time-consuming parts of cheese making, but I find it quite relaxing and meditative. I also don't get too carried away in trying to make the curds all exactly the same size. After the initial cut and rest, I also lift the curds with a slotted spoon to cut up any longer ones I may have missed. It's then time to bring the mixture back to temperature and cook the curds for roughly half an hour so they release any residual whey before straining through a cheesecloth. I use the leftover whey from feta this time to make a traditional ricotta cheese, but if I don't have time to make it, we usually end up feeding the whey to the pigs. I then bundle up the strained curds and hang them over a bowl to drain any more whey for a few hours before turning the cheese around to get a better shape and leaving it to drain overnight. The whole process ends up taking the better half of a day, so it helps to have a few other chores on the go for the waiting time in between steps. I sanitize all the tools that I plan to use for cheese making in boiling water to avoid any unwanted contamination of my milk or cultures. It's time to remove the feta from its cloth and cut into inch-thick pieces, covering liberally with fine salt and setting aside to mature for 3 days in a sealed container on the kitchen bench. Once the cheese has matured in this container, I then place it in a brine in glass jars and store it in the fridge for at least a week to mature before using. To make the pie, I first chop some onions and leeks and the stems of the rainbow chard. With a healthy amount of tallow in the pot, I slowly pan-fried the onion and leeks until translucent before adding the chopped rainbow chard stems. I added some more tallow and concentrated bone broth to this mixture and stewed the stems down, seasoning and stirring from time to time. I then squashed in all the chopped rainbow chard leaves and put the lid on the pot to allow them to steam for 5 to 10 minutes. A quick taste test to see if the greens were done, and then I strained the mixture in a colander over the sink. I then finely chopped some dill and parsley from the garden. Next, I roughly chopped some of the ricotta I made from the leftover whey. I then removed the week-old feta from its brine and chopped it up to add to the mixture. I think I whisked about 8 eggs together, or whatever we had to spare after breakfast, and then mixed the cheese, herbs, eggs and greens all together. I made a large frittata in this quiche dish, and then using up some frozen or butter puff pastry, I made 2 smaller loaf-sized pies. Next time I make this recipe, I'd like to make my own pie crust using the leaf lard we harvested from our last pig chipolata. If any of you have a recipe for pie crust using leaf lard, I would be very appreciative if you could leave it in the comments section below. Whilst we might not get the chance to respond to all of your comments, we do read them all, and we are very grateful of all the helpful information you provide us. With a few days over 35 degrees expected, I decided to shade my more fragile salads and seedlings by creating little temporary umbrellas using bracken fern scavenged from around the farm.
Well, we're about halfway through summer. you can see the dam's come down quite a bit. A lot of that's from evaporation. You know, we haven't just run this on the veggie patch. So this is a nice cool change, but the geese really appreciate having the dam when it's like 35, 36 degrees, as you'd appreciate. It doesn't seem to have, this cool change hasn't dampened their enthusiasm, but we're really happy to have this dam. It's right up high on the property. I think what would be nice though is if it could get a bit of shade. It might evaporate a bit less, but anyway, there's still plenty in here. It's a very deep dam. We do have marron, a kind of shellfish in here, and they can escape the heat by going down into a deep sump. Have you ever seen geese behave like that before?
No.
Look at them. I like how our dog's colour coordinated with our geese. They fully roll over on their back. I thought I'd like geese, but I didn't know I'd like them this much. You get beaten up, Jet? We planted this buckwheat just before summer, and there's definitely some seeds on there. I mean, it's not going to be a bumper harvest for us anyway, but it'll be in this field now. So when the rains come, we're going to run the pigs through and they'll trample this, eat the stems. The goats have been really getting in here every day and having a good time. It's definitely provided food for the goats over the summer. They've been able to, they find this really tasty. So yeah, there's enough seed here that this will probably naturalise in this paddock with the next rain. Buckwheat's pretty good because it frost kills. When the frost hits it, it kills it off, and then it'll incorporate back into this paddock. So it's a bit of a slow process, but eventually we'll get enough carbonaceous material into this soil, give it a bit of structure. Hopefully one day we'll have some pasture here and we can maybe have a cow or two. But at the moment, summer doesn't look impressive here on an Australian block of land, particularly when it hasn't really been looked after for a long time. But slowly.
We'd cleared and split all the timber from the felled blue gums around the house in winter and spring, but one tall and very ugly trunk remained to be removed in front of the house. Its diameter was too large for Troy's chainsaw to handle, so local legend and tree worker Chucky came round one evening with his saw to help us out. We were so relieved to finally have that tree trunk down, and the goats were pretty pleased with the new fodder and climbing gym. It was amazing to see how much it had sprouted over the summer months since Troy had climbed it to chop the dangerous limbs in October. Thanks everyone for joining us this week for a summertime experience on the Ramshackle Ranch. If you enjoyed the episode, thanks for hitting the thumbs up button and also subscribing if you haven't already, as it helps get our video out to like-minded audiences like yourselves.